Recently I put together a video on why synth manufacturers should pay attention to what Eurorack is doing, because there's just a lot of creativity that's coming out of that community and a lot of different ideas. But Eurorack has several big problems. One, it's super expensive. Two, it's really complicated. And three, it's just a lot of work. These are some pretty big hurdles, and Eurorack's going to need to overcome them if they want to become more mainstream and less niche. Can they do that? Well, there are a few manufacturers that are paving the way for the future, and I want to explore how they're overcoming some of these hurdles and what they're doing right.
A bunch of hieroglyphics. White blinking lights. Let's start by addressing the giant whale that comes along with starting a Eurorack project. There are a number of Eurorack modules that, by themselves, are not terribly priced. In fact, they are pretty affordable. The first Eurorack unit that I bought was the $300 Plinky. It's fairly priced for what it can do, and I happily run it naked, without a case, because cases are expensive.
And this is fine.
In fact, while units like this are comparable in price, by the time I want to add other things, like power and a case and some cables, and maybe a modulation module, effects unit, and a sequencer, now I'm over $1,000. And for $1,000, I can get any of these full-fledged synths instead. And that's why many people just automatically go with traditional synthesizers.
Dovetailing into the cost aspect is the complexity problem, which is complex in and of itself. First, you need almost PC building skills to be able to put one of these together.
You need a case, power supply, MIDI I&O, audio I&O, cables, lots and lots of cables.
Lots of guns.
Oscillators, envelopes, LFOs, modulators, sequencers, effects, and forget about drums. That just adds another 8 to 12 layers.
Indeed.
Having a number of separate modules means that you also have to remember how each one works. And some of these things come with very little in terms of instructions. Some don't even have jacks or knobs labeled.
Remember that dovetailing comment I made? Well, complicated things take a lot of work. Each one of those items that I mentioned needs to be researched and purchased.
I mean, some actual thought has to go into this dream synth you are making in order for it to work correctly, and not just be that dilapidated shed that you tried to build to store your yard tools in. Then you need to put everything together and start patching and sliding and turning. That's a lot of effort if all you want to do is just play some music.
Now, to a certain subset of people, all these things that I have outlined are not necessarily negatives. Life's about the journey, and building a Eurorack system can be a fun and very rewarding experience. But, like the video games of the 1980s, it can also be difficult and tedious at times.
Guns.
Okay, old guys.
We're waiting for death.
Remember the golden age of video games? I'm talking the 1980s here. Remember Bard's Tale? There were no automatic mapping features in those early games. You needed graph paper and a pencil. What about fast travel? If you wanted to level up, you had to run all the way through town to the castle, up to the top floor, kill the 4 ranks of 99 berserkers, run back down, save the game, dump your loot, and do it all over and over again. There's a word for that. Oh yeah, it's this one. Eurorack and video games share a lot of commonalities. They're both like those old choose-your-own-adventure books. With Eurorack, you're building your own synthesizer from parts. How many oscillators do you want? How about effects? Are you going to go with a sequencer or a bunch of random generators or both? Having all these cables means that you get to choose how you want to hook everything up. But hooking and unhooking cables and writing down lists of functions so that you remember them pretty much gets you back to that grind thing.
One method of overcoming the cost problem is by making kit modules like this, where the user puts together the unit itself. This is great because usually the largest slice of the cost pie is the labor. And if you offload that to the user, then you can make something like this pretty affordable. Eurorack appeals to people that like Legos and puzzles and things like that. So putting together something like this is just more of the same. It's a fun and relaxing experience. I had a great time making my little Plinky here.
But while turning a module into a kit reduces cost, it also adds complexity. And there are a number of people who don't want to get into the Eurorack sphere, mainly because of that issue. So let's take a look at how one manufacturer is addressing this. In trying to decide if I want to grapple with the world of Eurorack, I stumbled onto the Noise It Warp. At $700, the Warp is not an inexpensive module, but it has a slew of features going for it. First is looks. I mean, come on, this thing looks sexy. The black and gold, the nice screen in the center, the galaxy backlit green and blue like the Northern Lights. It's very compact, the knobs are actually labeled, and you can understand what's going on.
Second is sound. A lot of wavetable synths have kind of a harsh digital sound to them. This thing sounds warm and analog.
Now, here's the part where the Warp breaks out from the rest of the pack and helps to reduce that complexity issue. It's got a screen, it's got controls for the screen, and it's got a SIM card, so I can store pretty much unlimited presets. Not 5 or 10 presets, unlimited. Now we are finally talking synthesizer territory.
I've been reluctant to get into Eurorack because I like presets. I also like the ability to save it and then be able to come back to it at a later date and tinker with it some more.
If I've got something like State Azur's rig here, that's impossible. I mean, how long did it take him to put this together? This is one preset. It's an awesome, super complex preset. And unless you want to store your $15,000 Eurorack synth in a shed and never touch it again, any changes means that this preset is gone. And that sucks. Not just kind of sucks, really sucks.
Having this little thing here is kind of the key to the preset game. Now, lower cost units aren't going to have something like an SD card, but anything about $300 or $400 should.
The screen is also another big thing. Without it, I have to memorize things. With it, not so much, especially if you've got knobs controlling things on the screen.
Sound on Sound magazine called the Warp a category leader, and even though I don't own one, I would agree based on everything I've seen. Now, there have been others that have paved the way before the Warp came out, things with CPUs and SD cards. You've got the Eurobureau, you've got the Egan Matrix, and others. And most recently, Expert Sleepers came out with this little thing called the Disting NT, and it's pretty cool.
The Disting NT looks like a really powerful unit, but there are 3 things I want you to notice right off the bat. 1, a USB-C port right on top. How innovative. 2, an SD card right on top. How innovative. And 3, a screen. Now I wish the screen was bigger, mainly because this unit can do a lot. It's got instruments and effects, sequencers, a mixer, utilities.
I have 2 skills. I drink and I know things.
This is pretty much a mini computer that can do a lot of the heavy lifting. And I think units like these are getting a lot of buzz in the mod community because they make sense. They save time at a time where everyone is extremely busy and nobody wants to draw maps on graph paper anymore. This is the secret sauce that I think the Eurorack community needs to gravitate towards. It will let people build smaller setups with less complexity that can essentially replace dozens of modules, store hundreds of presets, and save a ton of time. If I had a Wave and maybe a similar spec sequencer, and then something like the Poly FX Hector or a Zoya Eurobureau, then I can build a full-fledged synth that can easily rival something like a Modal Cobalt or a Korg Minilog. Heck, in some aspects, it would even outpace those synths.
So hats off to developers like Expert Sleepers and Noisit, and others who are pushing Eurorack in this direction, adding SD cards, and screens, and CPUs, and just making things more in general synth-like. I think this is going to appeal to your general synth user, and it's going to allow Eurorack to grow. It's going to make things less complex, and most importantly, it's going to let you save presets, which is awesome because I really like presets.
Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Keep making great music. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the other side of the mountain.